and welcome to I Should Say That Out Loud. My name is Donna Brundell, and I'm your host. I'm so excited to introduce you to my first guest this season. Her name is Genie Love, and she is a neurodiverse professionals coach. She coaches neurodiverse professionals and executives to manage executive functions, take control of their time and attention, so they can consistently get stuff done and achieve their long-term professional and personal goals. And she has been a special education teacher for 20 years, specializing in working with students who have been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and ADD. Thank you, Genie, for being on my show. Welcome.
Thank you, Donna. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Aw, thanks. Well, I want to start out just by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you made the switch from teaching to now coaching.
Yeah, I was through a winding path, as life sometimes does. I was a special education teacher for 20 years. My original degree was as a physical therapist, and then moved to a ski area of Colorado, and I don't know, did a ski bum thing for a little while, and then found myself working in schools, and that I really enjoyed. And so that led to becoming a special education teacher, and then just bounced around primarily with high school students. And I did that in a public school for about 13 years. And then I had the opportunity to work in South America as a special education teacher. So I did that for 5 years. And that brings us to COVID, the time of change for many people. And we returned to the U.S. My daughter, who was 7 years old at the time, she was kind of having some, well, we understand now that she has ADHD, but she was having some emotional regulation problems. Okay. And so my husband and I were trying to figure out what I was going to do with my career. I took some time off from teaching to be able to be available for her if she needed some homeschooling, but also some emotional support. And I was researching and thinking about, what am I going to do? I don't know that public education is what I want to go back to for the second half of my career. And as I was researching, I found that there's a growing number of adults who are identifying themselves as having ADHD and or autism. And I thought, well, this is what I've always really enjoyed doing with high school students. And I wonder if I have something to offer these adults. And so I put myself out there as a coach and was getting clients, and found out that I do, from all of my experience, and my love of how the brain works, I do have something to offer. And so I pivoted to coaching, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm so happy and loving it.
Wow, that's a great journey. My goodness. All over the country, all over the world. That's so exciting. You speak Spanish?
Not well. I was working in an English-speaking school primarily, surrounded by English-speaking people, but enough that I feel comfortable traveling, solving problems. And so, so that's great.
Along than I am in your Spanish then.
Yeah, it's amazing. It opens up a whole other part of the world that I feel comfortable traveling in. So that's super
so cool. That's one of my goals. Yeah. Someday.
It's a good one.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so would you like to tell us about your coaching program itself?
Yes. So I coach, my clients have either been identified officially through a medical diagnosis and evaluation, or many of them have diagnosed themselves as having ADHD or autism. And the thing that I have found with the self-diagnosis, although I am not qualified to diagnose anyone because my background is in teaching, but with all of my years of experience and spending time with people with ADHD and autism, I found that the self-diagnosis is usually pretty accurate, in my opinion. And so they come to me because they maybe want to understand what that means, because this is new to them, and they're ready to move forward. Many of my clients have been misdiagnosed in the past with anxiety or depression or OCD and didn't understand why the meds didn't work or the therapy didn't work.
Wow.
And so now it's time, they feel like they've really connected with themselves and it's time to move forward. And so I have a program that's got 3 pillars, essentially. One aspect of it is evidence-based strategies. So whatever it is, whether it's work or personal life, they come to me for, we dive right in and we start building some strategies that are going to work for you, your life, your goals. Evaluating those, they're not going to work the first time for whatever reason. So then we just reflect and respond and tweak and fine tune. So that's a huge part of the program, as well as I am a huge believer in mindfulness, which many of my clients have had experience with meditation of many different aspects. So maybe extended periods of sitting. But I teach more of a being present throughout the day, because our brains so frequently are carrying us away to the past, to the future, and that isn't serving us right now, whether you have ADHD or autism. And so we practice mindfulness. We learn how to be present so that we are less emotional, less impulsive, and more consistent with the strategies that we're trying to implement.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, I've been practicing it for years and it's changed my life. And so.
Yeah. Well, and if I could jump in before you get to your third pillar.
Please.
Mindfulness, when I first heard that term many years ago, I'm autistic myself, and you know that, my audience knows that, but when I hear words, I'm a literal thinker, so I picture what it means, and I picture the brain, and I picture mindfulness, like I have to be mindful of my mind. I have to think about my brain. So that makes me think of like the literal brain. And that made me think, well, how is that going to help me if I just think about my brain? It's pink, it's soft, it's squishy. Like, how is that going to help me? So I wasn't excited about mindfulness until I learned what it meant and what it, the breaking down what the actual activity of mindfulness is, and then starting to practice it and realizing what it actually does for you. And I think incorporating that into the workplace, because I've used it more with clients in the nonprofit organization I used to manage, and we worked on healing from trauma. So that's more of a, healing an emotional aspect of life. But then putting that in place in a workplace or even just your personal life, I can see the benefits there too, because I know from my experience with work, I can be traumatized at work, even in little ways. And my brain can start to float away to what those things trigger. So you can finish the pillars first, and then we can go back and talk more about mindfulness. Or if you want to keep going right now, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think let's just keep going with it, which is, part of that is identifying what that is that's triggering you. And that's what's so beautiful about mindfulness, is it really is just a regrounding of anything. So whether it's your impulsivity, so that you can focus deeply on your work, the response to like the dopamine rush of like checking the messages, that can be something that we're all kind of addicted to that right now. And so how do we like prevent that? But then also any sort of negative emotions that arise. And so many people with ADHD or autism carry a lot of negative history with them from struggling in high school and then also in their early work life. And so we can identify those negative emotions and then let them go and come back to the present. And it can be happening. So the difference of sitting for long periods of time is mindfulness it can happen in 30 seconds. It can happen in 2 minutes. It's using it right now. If you think about like how much of our day we spend thinking about what has already happened or worrying about what is to come, and how much time we actually spend right here in the present, it's insane. We're present very little of the time.
That's so
And
true.
so there's just so many uses for mindfulness. And so that's why I really love it.
I love that. And so how can we put that into practice like in an office setting? Because I know touching your feet on the grass is a great way to ground yourself and it feels great. But you can't do that at a desk unless you get like a little patch of AstroTurf that you put under your desk, and then can you take your shoes off? I don't know.
I can give you maybe 3 that are sort of introductory ones that I could teach. The first one is mindful listening.
Oh.
And so you can just close your eyes. Mine are closed if you're listening.
Me too.
And just notice what you hear. And don't get attached to the sound, but just notice what you hear. And so you can practice that for 30 seconds or a minute. You can.
Question?
Yes.
I want you to keep going there, but what do you mean by don't get attached to the sound?
Okay. So when you, let's say, okay, I don't know if you heard just a moment ago, but there's thunder outside right now.
I did hear that, yeah.
For a storm. Okay. So if the thunder would happen, I would just think to myself, oh, that's thunder. And then I would let it go and I would come back to listening. And so you constantly are coming back to the task that you're doing. I wouldn't think, well, I'm on a podcast right now. I put the laundry out to dry and I wonder if my husband's going to notice and think to bring it in. So what we have a tendency to do is get really attached to those thoughts, and then they kind of carry us away, and maybe I'll worry about the laundry gets wet, and then you're going on and I'm not here fully present with you. So the idea is that you would notice the thunder. Maybe your thoughts will carry you away to the laundry and you'll say, well, okay, but right now I'm listening. I'm present with Donna in this podcast. The laundry will take care of itself later. So don't get attached to where your thoughts take you. There's this aspect of mindfulness called equanimity, which is without judgment. And so I don't get mad at myself for my brain wandering off. I just come back over and over and over.
Very nice. I heard the thunder and I started to get worried for you. I'm like, are you safe? Can you stay and keep doing this podcast?
Hopefully the power won't go out. We'll see what happens.
Okay, good. So that's a really good point. I really like that. Thanks for breaking that down. So now you can continue to the other 2 of the 3 ways to practice mindfulness at work.
So the next one you might consider is just, I actually have a few more. Okay. You might consider just like noticing, everybody maybe is more familiar with noticing where you feel your breathing. So maybe you feel your breathing going in and out of your nose, or the rising and falling of your chest, or the in and out of your stomach. So you can sort of anchor to those and just feel that for 30 seconds or a minute. Another one is you might feel, where do you feel on your body? So maybe you feel your feet in your shoes. Maybe you feel your butt in the chair. I have these sleeves that are a little tight, so I can feel those. So you can just kind of tune into your body. The last one, I love this one I was going to share, is maybe perhaps you're in a meeting with other people and you feel like you just kind of need to reground again. And so you don't want to close your eyes. You might just notice someone in the room who you appreciate and really just send them some kind thoughts. Like, I hope they're well. I hope they're happy. I hope they're experiencing joy. And you can just kind of send some good wishes to that person. And that is always brings you back to the present, feels good, and brings you good energy as well. So that's a few
great.
ways that you could practice in the workplace.
I love that. Well, I think we could practice that if we're bored in a meeting too. Keep us alert
Yes.
to what's happening if it's not very interesting. And I have all these crazy thoughts that rabbit trail off.
I love it.
Using if you like nod off a little bit in a boring meeting, you can say, "Oh, I was just practicing mindfulness."
There you go. I'm just present.
I'm just being present. I love
Perfect.
it. Okay, so does that bring us back to your third pillar?
So the third pillar of my program is positive emotional intelligence. And it really kind of brings the whole thing together, I think, which is, and mental fitness. So those two things work together. And again, it's just taking all those negative thoughts, identifying them and sending them on their way, and then tuning into a more positive way to solve the problem or to tackle what is in front of you. So many of us, most of us, I think, have these very strong neural pathways in our brain of negativity. Like, I'm bad. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with other people. There's something wrong with the situation that I'm in. And we can identify that negative thinking as one way to go, but we can start to build stronger neural pathways in a more positive direction of how can I use what's happening? How can I see the positive in what's happening? That kind of thing. And then also the mental fitness aspect is to not lose the strategies that we've been building together, because so much, you've tried so many things and it hasn't worked, and that we have a tendency to lose good habits and revert to old ways. So how can we keep those new techniques that we've learned?
Oh, that's
that's
great.
my program.
Wow. I think everyone would benefit from a program like that. Let alone people with
I have
neurodiversity. Yeah. I can just imagine a whole team of people going through that and growing and improving exponentially.
I have thought about offering it to teachers, and yes, I've got other people in mind that I think, could benefit from the program.
Wonderful. And how long would you recommend that someone is involved with a coaching program with you?
I think that we start at 6 months, because I want to go slowly. I want to not give you so much. And we meet weekly for like 45-minute sessions. And I don't want to give you so much that it becomes overwhelming. So we just kind of build this a little bit at a time.
That makes sense.
And then at the end of the 6 months, we can decide, do you feel like you've got this, or do we want to, continue working together? But the initial, and I've also found, like, with a 6-month commitment, it's going to be ups and downs. Sometimes things are going to go well, and sometimes things are not going to go well. And if we're committed for this significant period of time, then my clients aren't going to drop off when it gets hard. We're going to keep working through it together. Yeah,
that's a good point. Because there's ebbs and flows in anyone's work journey throughout the year. Just different things that happen in a calendar year that can cause that, even that's outside of work.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's great. We've already fleshed out mindfulness. Is there anything more that you'd like to say about mindfulness?
It's just the process, just to sort of summarize what it is. It's the process of trying to be in the present over and over and over and over, because none of us is good at it. And so that's why, it's people call it a mindfulness practice. We're constantly practicing this.
Yeah. I think that's so helpful in relationships and parenting too, not just the workplace.
Yeah. Not being afraid to just sort of hit the reset and start over again. And it doesn't have to be at the new year. It doesn't have to be at the new month. It doesn't have to be on a Monday. It can be on a Thursday. Okay, I gotta start this over again. I gotta pick this up again.
Yeah, that reminds me of my daughter's golf strategy. Because in golfing, you hit a lot of bad shots and you have a couple good shots throughout your round. But in order to get to those good shots, you have to forget the previous bad shots. Then you have to keep resetting your brain and just forget about the last shot. I'm on a new shot and I'm going to do my best on this shot. I think we can do that throughout the day at work too.
Yeah, she might be a mindfulness guru to be able to do that.
Yeah. All right. And speaking of golf, that just kind of brings me to my next question for you is, do you incorporate physical movement at all? I know physical movement is important for me in my mental health personally and outside of work, but I also have tried to incorporate it in work as well. And, standing up, stretching, taking breaks, walking around a little bit. I find that really helps me to just kind of calm down and refocus and recenter my brain. Maybe that's a mindfulness thing. I don't know.
I do encourage movement. I do encourage and coach my clients to rethink their workspace so that you've got it. Have the opportunity to stand, have the opportunity to move, to even have a flexible workspace so that you can work in a quiet environment and really breaks throughout the day, movement breaks throughout the day. Or even, okay, so to finish that, yes, movement breaks throughout the day because that can bring a lot of like calming and clarity from our busy brains that are busy bopping around from screen to screen to screen. So to get away from that and move is really good. And then another little technique that I will coach my clients is that if a task seems big, overwhelming, daunting, or you have this block of time, but it's hard to stay focused for that block of time, to break it up into little mini units of time with movement breaks built in, just as simple as I'm going to go now get a glass of water, or I'm going to go warm my coffee up in the microwave, or I'm just going to take a lap around, the office or something like that. So that sort of movement throughout the day, I absolutely coach. And then I also, as I start working and my clients are starting to see some progress, then we start talking about nutrition, diet, and exercise. Yeah. I'm sort of really into the gut brain connection right now. Yeah. So we kind of start to talk about that as we get into our coaching a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome. Very good. What would you say to an employer to encourage them to invest more in their employees to learn more about utilizing your services? What would be the benefits to employers that would be worthwhile?
I think it's important for employers to know that if you have a team of people, I would be willing to bet as long as you're supervising 20 people, you likely already have someone who's neurodivergent on your team. Yeah. And it benefits you to understand what that means and to get to know them and how their brain works. Because if they're busy trying to cover up their weaknesses and trying to hold it all together, you're not getting the best out of that employee. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, these things aren't necessarily big. It can start really small. So perhaps you have someone who needs to move. Perhaps you have someone who needs a quieter place to get away for a break. Perhaps you have someone who takes a little bit longer to think. Yeah. And when you ask, are there any questions or comments at the end of the session? They don't have them yet, but they might have them tomorrow, or they might have them even in an hour and a half from now. Yeah. You might have someone who really struggles with auditory processing, and so to have visuals. Or someone who really struggles with shifting the routine, and you spring things on them. Or
I can relate to that one.
yeah, or shifting between activities. So I have to leave what I'm doing to go to the meeting, and then I have to shift back again. That can take time and energy. And so to understand that these are not deal breaker issues, but if we can understand them and build a culture where we can even communicate that my brain works better this way,
Yeah.
then you're going to have, your employees are going to be killing it a whole lot more than if they're like me, like, I don't know where the document is. You emailed it. I know that I filed that email away somewhere. I don't know where it is. I mean, really, that just is like how my brain works. And so if we can just talk about that and be okay with that and work together to find solutions, how can we build teams that support each other? You're very detail oriented. I'm not. But I'm a really great brainstormer. So if you want to come by and chat with me and like bounce ideas off, awesome. So how can we work together to support each other in all the ways that our brains work to make an amazing, cognitively diverse team?
Wow. That sounds amazing. I'd love to work for a team like that.
Me too. It's the ideal. That would be amazing.
Yeah. I was diagnosed like 4.5 years ago, and I had, struggles in all my different jobs over the years, but I never knew why. I perform really well, but I kind of kept my struggles to myself and just worked that much harder to overcome them, which took a lot of energy out of me, and it affected more my home life than my work life, because I would work super hard at work to get everything accomplished in spite of my struggles. And then I'd get home exhausted and not understand why, and not able to communicate to my bosses or my coworkers or even my family why I'm so exhausted, and help them understand how much energy it takes to do that. It's hard to communicate that to people who don't understand.
And as you said, you didn't understand. So that's the other thing, is not all of your employees who are neurodivergent know that they are.
Yep.
And they don't necessarily know the strategies that will help them. And so you can support them in learning a little bit more about what works for them, being willing to do trial and error to figure out what's going to work.
At my current job that I'm in now, I finally, I've been diagnosed now. I've done so much research and learned about not only autism, but how it affects me and how it affects me at work and at home and all the different parts of life. And I don't know if I'd call it courage, because I guess I just got to a point at work where I realized if I don't say something, the feedback that I'm getting from my coworkers won't change, because they don't understand how differently my brain works. And they're just going to keep saying these things over and over again, like they have been, that they would not say if they understood how my brain works. And so I decided to go to HR and explain to them that I'm autistic and I have, different needs. And I don't really know how to communicate that yet, but I just wanted to make that known so people could try to understand. And they responded really well, except they didn't know what to do right away. And they kind of did their own research, and they realized that, they learned that every person with autism is different, and there's no like one strategy that works for every person. And so they said, now that we know that, now we're even less aware of how to help you. So that kind of frustrated them even more. And so they decided, we're just going to give you time and space to try to figure things out, and know that we're here for you, and let us know if you figure it out. So it was, awkward and difficult. And that was like 6-7 months ago. But since then, just the fact that they know, and I am able to kind of say little things here and there that let little light bulbs go off, eventually we've come to, a better place, and they understand me better. And I think if we had a coach, someone helping both sides of this, that it would move it along much quicker. And even from the little progress we've made now, I'm sure there's a ton more progress we could make. But I think just opening the can of worms it was difficult, but it was a good way to go.
Yeah, and that's so fantastic. Another thing for people to think about is that as you're educating them, they're more alert to seeing it in other people, and not even necessarily that other people are going to be autistic, but that their brains work that way. And so what we do for one person often ends up benefiting many people.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's, you're so brave, and good for you for doing it. And I'm glad that it's going well, and that they're so open-minded, and now they're learning and a little more open to seeing that people see the world.
I don't know if I would call it bravery, because I just got so frustrated that I realized if I don't, because in the past, in jobs I've had in the past, I would get to that point of frustration and I would just decide, I guess I need to go to a different job. And so I've had a lot of jobs and careers, and I finally realized in this job, I'm tired of moving around. I'm just going to have a conversation and be a pioneer in this and just see what happens, and what could it hurt? Better than starting over again. And it kind of backfired a little bit in the beginning, because I think they didn't understand what different means. I think they thought that different means less able to comprehend things. So I had to show them that I'm still capable and competent, but different means different, not less than. And now that they see that, now it's going kind of exponentially better. But I had to just know that it would take time for them to understand that, and give them patience as well to figure that out.
Neurodiversity is pretty new to the workplace. And so there's a lot of education to be done.
Yeah.
And so education to the managers, as well as education to the employees.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's great. I think once they see how it works, then you can just see that people think in all sorts of different ways, and that's cool.
I think there's a lot of myths out there about autism too, that cause managers and coworkers to think, once they know that I or anyone on the team is autistic, they have all these preconceived ideas of what autism is, and they bring that to the table, and they treat you like what they think it is from the movies and different shows they've seen. And so that's another hurdle to overcome too.
Yes. Or, the young niece or nephew, or, child who's been diagnosed, but it looks so much different. And, adults who have always just looked like they're fine. So now, there's the spectrum is broadening. And I mean, it's great that people finally understand who they are and how their brains work. Like, there's such profound gratitude from my clients when they're like, finally, I understand who I am.
Yeah.
And so now we get to move forward, but it's a whole new world of people with a lot to learn about what it is, about what autism is, and ADHD as well.
Yeah. And I imagine having a coach to navigate through that, like what I did, would be helpful to help someone realize, okay, there might be some speed bumps in this process as people work through their preconceived ideas, and I'm here to help you through that as they figure it out. And I'm sure you could probably even help the person's team in some way, in a roundabout way. Or if they would engage with you directly once that person comes forward, that would be amazing too.
Yeah, so I think there's just all around this, there's a lot of education that can happen. And so the person now identifies as having ADHD or autism, but doesn't know what to do with that. And as well as how can they advocate? How can they figure out what they need? And then how can they communicate that to the people around them?
Yeah.
And how can the people who are around them find very easy ways? I mean, it doesn't have to be challenging, like I said, to support them to then, move on to meet their professional and personal goals and be an even better team member and employee.
Yeah. And I also think, too, that one of the preconceived ideas is two things. One, that adults can grow out of autism, which is not true. And that people think, well, why should we devote all this time and attention to it when you're just going to get better in the end anyway? But then also on the flip side, when you've gone, like for me, gone so long without the diagnosis or the awareness, and seemingly people from the outside think that we've done so well, and then you come out with this diagnosis, it's like, well, I know that just doesn't fit you. I don't see you as that. And like, you've done so well all this time, and now why bother talking about it? Why bring it up? Why, make such a big deal out of it? But again, all the masking and hiding that we've done over the years and the toll that's taken, that's what they haven't seen, the side of us that we keep private. And so it's hard to just like open that whole can of worms and say, yeah, I've hidden a lot. Like,
yeah. And like you said, the emotional toll, the energetic toll, and that you're getting ready to maybe you have to move on to a new job because you can't do this one anymore. It's just too exhausting. And so, I mean, I think for employers, retention of employees so that you don't have to go and search for a new one and train them and whether or not they'll work. So this is another huge reason to understand what neurodiversity is even more, is that you're going to keep your employees longer, happier.
I think that's a huge, very huge reason. And then also opening up the dialogue to make it safe for people to share their neurodiversity, because it is such a scary thought, but also we struggle with communication. I know I struggle with communication. And then to share such a scary topic on top of struggling with communication at all is like, it makes it nearly impossible. And I think in the past, I've left jobs without explaining why, because how do you explain it? And then I think employers have lost a lot of employees without knowing why, or without knowing the truth of why. And they might give other reasons that kind of give any reason. And then they would be able to retain employees, but also keep them happier and just open up that dialogue to make it safe. I think safety is huge for me, not just physically, but emotionally too.
Yeah, and so I think that's where it fits in so nicely to your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. This is a group of people who have a lot to give, but they need to feel safe. They need to feel understood and respected, and to be able to let guards down a little bit or a lot in some cases, and just then they can excel.
Yeah. Wow. That was great. A lot of that we didn't plan.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, good stuff.
Good.
I'm going to ask you 2 final questions. How can people find you, and is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, you can find me. I have a website, genielove.coach, GENIELOVE.coach. And on there, you can find a little bit more about the work and the services that I offer. And there's also a place for you to book a conversation with me. I offer free initial discovery calls. And so if you'd like to just have a coaching call, you're welcome to get on with me, and I will give you some strategies that you can walk away with, and we can talk about my program if you're interested or not. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's my social media. And on there, you can also find, I have a free guide to calming the chaos in your brain. which kind of goes a little bit with the mindfulness that we discussed earlier. And so you can grab that tool, and then at the same time, that'll sign you up for a weekly newsletter that I have. And so I'm always offering tips, strategies, or just anecdotal stories of what's going on in my life. And so that's another way to kind of follow along with what I'm doing.
Well, that's great. I'm definitely going to sign up for your newsletter. I can't wait to see that.
Great. Yeah. And I love feedback. So always just message me on LinkedIn or respond to those emails and let me know what's going on and what you think. I love it.
Awesome. That makes me think of something else. I've been working with the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin, and I spoke at their annual conference last month. And one of their board members is working on a next steps packet for adults who are newly diagnosed with autism. And I wonder if listing you as a resource would be a good fit for that, because a lot of adults are in the workforce and could use assistance. So yeah, I think I'm going to recommend that.
Thank you. Yeah, please. I love making connections. I would love that. And there's just not a lot out there, kind of as we talked about, as far as coaching and support. We give it to the kids, but we didn't have that broad spectrum diagnosis when 30, 40, 50, and 60-year-olds were in school. And so now I'm essentially teaching adults, and there's just not a lot of us. And so I'm happy to be a resource for anyone.
Yeah. And I think that myth that you grow out of it when you're an adult is proving to not be true. And people are starting to realize that and connect that with themselves. I think especially when their kids are getting diagnosed and they're reading the whole list of what it means to be autistic and like, oh, that's familiar. Oh, that's familiar. Oh, that's familiar. And now more and more adults are realizing that they are autistic for that reason.
Yeah, I have a new client that's exactly what happened. And she was going through the diagnostic questionnaire and was like,
lo and behold.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's me.
So one final question. Obviously, you're able to serve people around the country with all the great internet and Zoom and LinkedIn and everything that is available now.
Yeah. And I have clients all over the world too. So yeah, I am available to anyone, anywhere.
That's exciting. It's been so nice to meet you and get to know you and talk to you through this interview. And I look forward to following you and seeing what happens from here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Donna. It was nice talking to you. And I look forward to keeping our connection going as well.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, thanks for being here. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to our conversation. And I love feedback too. So I'd love to hear your feedback from both of us or questions that we could follow up with. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Great. That was fun. Thanks, Donna.
Very fun. Good job.
Thank you. You too.
Aw, thanks. Well, I should let you attend to your laundry, huh?
Yes. It looks like it rained, so I guess we'll see what happened.
Okay.